Isha Beccaria. I'm a data science consultant at WorkHuman, which means I spend my days inside recognition data, figuring out what it tells organizations about their workforce, their culture, and what they actually value. Over the next 30 minutes, I want to talk to you about something that's on everybody's mind right now. It's not AI, but it's adjacent. It's skills. It's a big topic. And if you've been to any HR conference in the last 18 months, including this one, you've heard the word skills about 14,000 times. There's a skills-based organization track, there's a skills-powered keynote, and there's probably a skills happy hour happening at some point. So I appreciate you spending at least the next 30 minutes with me on this topic. But I want to reassure you that most skills conversations are about finding skills, and today we're going to talk about seeing them and naming them, and how to do that. But first, let's collect a little data ourselves. There are a lot of you in this room, so if you are at a table by yourself, please come up and get a partner. I want you to take a second and think about the best person on your team. And no, you can't say it's Claude or Gemini, it has to be a human. Please pick a human and chat to the person next to you for about a minute and tell them what makes that person really great, a great team.
Hello. For me, that would be the person who is collaborative and very well open to experiences. They do not automatically say, no, it's hard, I don't have time, and more like, let's try this, or this is how we can brainstorm together, how we can work collaboratively. So I think being collaborative is what do I say from character?
There's a lot of great team members here that are human, which is great, but I got a lot of content to get through. So quiet on the set, everybody. I asked people on my team what makes the same question, what makes somebody great to work with? And chances are, if you were thinking about a human, your answers looked pretty similar. I also added a late-breaking one from Angela Duckworth's talk, Surrogate Grit. Was anybody at Angela Duckworth's talk? Yes, what a great skill, or what great sentiment. Surrogate grit, which is when you have a down moment and someone else has to have grit for you and they lift you up. I loved that. I noticed feedback, inspiration, humor, mentorship. And I'm guessing none of you said that the best person on your team summarizes your meetings, drafts your emails, cleans up your spreadsheets. You said something about who they are as a human. That's because there are uniquely human skills that AI can't replicate. Yes, AI is changing how we work, but AI isn't human. It's actually why I still get to do my job. Leaders don't want a model to tell them what's happening in their organizations. They want a person that they can trust who can look at the data and tell them what it means. So my husband actually put it best, and I had to steal his phrase. AI is a probabilistic parrot. It takes, yes, let that sink in. It is a parrot. It takes everything that already exists and gives you its best guess at what comes next, which is incredibly useful until you need something that's never been done before, or you need someone who can read the room, or you need a judgment call that depends on knowing the people in front of you. That's the work human skills. Those are the skills that we're going to talk about today. So any conversation about skills, and of which there are many, must be grounded in a taxonomy. And there are also many taxonomies of skills. But for today, we're using the framework from the World Economic Forum called the New Economy Skills. It maps the categories that will shape work over the next decade. And the WEF is releasing it in 5 reports. 2 came out at the end of last year, and more are coming this year. The first one, human-centric skills, draws on WorkHuman recognition data, and I had the privilege to work on that data myself. We'll get into it in a second. But first, when we talk about human-centric skills, these are the skills that AI can't totally replace. This is what we're talking about. Creative thinking, for the problems that have never been solved before, resilience for staying steady when everything around you is changing, curiosity for the people who keep learning when no one's making them, and empathy for reading the room the moment the person in front of you. These used to be called soft skills, but the web is calling it the hard currency of the labor market. So let's see how to spend that currency. What gets me excited about this research is it's all about data, and data from different sources. So these different organizations contributed to the report. Indeed contributed hiring data, job postings. BetterUp is a coaching platform, and they provided some self-reported skills. Coursera provided information about what courses people are signing up for and taking and how long it's taking them to earn certain skills. We're not going to talk about Coursera today, but it's in the report. And of course, Workhuman provided recognition data. And I'll tell you why that makes it the most special. Let's get into it. Okay, so you knew some big numbers were coming. Here they are. In the next 5 years, 40% of core job skills will be disrupted. 92 million roles will be displaced, but 170 million new roles will be created. That's a net gain of 78 million jobs. The work isn't disappearing, you've probably heard this before, it's changing. And 80% of employers say reskilling and upskilling is going to be critical to keeping up. So take a breath. For all the talk about AI taking over, only 13% of work that depends on interpersonal dynamics, contextual judgment, and lived experience can even partially be taken over by AI. Those are the skills that make us human. Reading people, weighing context, drawing on what we've actually lived through, those are still ours. And I see this in my job every day. I can ask AI to write a script, to test a hypothesis, to draft a first draft on a report, and it's really mind-blowing how fast it can do these things. I'm a little floored, but it's still a probabilistic parrot. It can't think creatively about how to connect a finding to a story. It can't earn someone's trust. It can't empathize, even though I might play that on TV. The chart makes it clear. What the work that AI is genuinely good at, the orange and the red, that's pattern-heavy, rule-bound work. The work AI barely touches is the dark blue. That's everything human: empathy, resilience, leadership, creativity. Does that sound familiar? That should be about what you were talking about a minute ago, what you valued in your team members. AI is changing what we do, but it's not changing how we do our jobs, or what makes someone good at their job. So if human skills are critical, and if AI can't touch them, if they're what makes someone great at their job, then we'd expect we'd be hiring for them, right? Well, the Indeed data told a slightly different story. Indeed looked at millions of US job postings, and 72% mentioned even one human-centric skill. Education's at 92%, sounds about right, until you flip it. Even in the field literally built around human development, 8% of postings don't mention a single human skill. Financial services at 82%, healthcare 68%, for jobs where empathy is literally the work. And supply chain, more than half of those postings don't mention any human skill at all. So what's going on here? It gets worse when you zoom in. What the report claims is that this is an issue with visibility and an assumption that humans are bringing what used to be called soft skills to their jobs without them being explicitly named on these job descriptions. Now, that's a problem. We all know what happens when you make assumptions. It's not good. You could be right or you could be wrong. And the report claims that if you're not labeling the skills that you're hiring for, you could miss them. So the gap here is really in the language of the postings. And the report is calling them assumed competencies. So we just talked about job postings and what's getting listed as necessary in the job market. What about what you're describing yourself as on your LinkedIn profile? So another stat from Indeed looked at how men and women were describing AI engineering skills on their LinkedIn profiles. And really stunningly, over 90% of the countries that they analyzed showed a gender gap, with men reporting these skills more. This isn't a skills gap, it's a claiming gap. What you call yourself becomes data. What you don't put in words disappears from your resume, from your profile, from the systems making decisions about you. So I want you to think about how you're presenting yourself internally and externally. Are you describing yourself with the skills that your organization is looking for, that your future employer could be looking for? Think about the data that you're using to describe yourself and how that's getting used. Okay, let's pivot to BetterUp, which is a coaching platform. BetterUp surfaced some self-reported skills from 2019 to 2025, and what you should notice, a few things on this chart. One, there was a big dip, a big elbow around COVID. And around that time, everybody started listing their skills as lower. They started declining and describing an erosion in skills. Except for two, empathy and leadership looked more resilient. And when you think about COVID, that makes sense. Empathy and leadership were the most resilient of the bunch there. The other thing you'll notice is that none of these lines have caught back up to 2019. And what the report suggests is that COVID kind of disrupted the structures for practicing skills, and without those environments, there was erosion. So we say that human-centric skills need investment and reinforcement, otherwise they might erode. So reinforcement is the key that's going to take us into the last section here on recognition data, my bread and butter. So when you think about recognition in a team meeting, for example, let's say there's a shout out that somebody did great work at the beginning of the team meeting. That feels good, right? But a thank you in a team meeting is forgotten. It's lost to the wind. But a thank you that gets recorded in a recognition platform is a data point. And when you think about that data point scaled across employees and years and organizational changes, you can really harness that to understand more about your culture. It becomes a signal. Okay, let's nerd out a little bit about the massive data set we used here. I looked at over 500,000 recognition messages and scraped it down to what we call organic recognition. So that's eliminating birthdays and service anniversaries to get at really what people are recognizing day to day. This was across 66 clients, 11 industries, 73 countries, and 7 years. But the coolest part of it all is that we used an NLP model on these recognition messages to capture the skills being recognized in those messages. Now, in those over 300,000 messages, 70% had at least one human-centric skill, which is awesome. But what you'll see is that some were more visible than others. Recognition isn't static. The world changes, and how we recognize each other, how we behave at work changes with it. Remember that BetterUp data? Every human skill dropped during the pandemic. Motivation was one of the steepest declines. But look what happened next. Recognition for motivation is up 50% since 2022. Now, this is really interesting because motivation and self-awareness is actually a proxy for productivity. And every HR leader in this room should know that productivity has been a big buzzword, a big push in recent years. So what we're seeing is that your employees have noticed that push, and they are seeing and reinforcing productivity, self-awareness, and motivation in others. So the other really cool thing about using recognition data for this report is looking at the monetary value that's associated with it. Not just the frequency of what's getting recognized, but also where are you putting your money towards? And what we saw is that empathy was 26% more likely than average to be non-monetary. So in a recognition program, your messages can have a monetary value or not, and different degrees of monetary value. Those messages that mentioned empathy were most likely to be an thank you, most likely to be an email. Remember that AI chart where empathy was the skill AI is least likely to ever transform? The most human of the human skills, the one machines simply can't replace? You'd think organizations would put their money behind it, but the data says otherwise. So what I would encourage you to do is think if empathy is a critical skill in your organization, put your money where your mouth is and make sure it's being reinforced appropriately. In the data set, we saw that leadership was recognized in about 45% of messages. It was about average value. But the really cool standout and interesting finding was that creative thinking was the highest reward value. It was the skill that had the highest premium, but it was only mentioned in 5% of messages. That's really rare. So I want you to take another second and get next to your neighbor again and think, what does creative thinking look like in your organization? Because 5% of messages makes it seem like we don't know what we're talking about. We might think we know what creativity means, but in your organization, what does creativity look like in your role? What kinds of behaviors represent creative thinking? Go ahead and take a minute. What is creativity?
I have to think about the creativity because I tend to not think myself much creativity thinking. I think it's doing things in a new way or challenging long-standing beliefs. I had some team members who were doing things a particular way that took a long time. And when we had like a new joiner to the team, I challenged that person to re-look at the process and maybe recreate it to be more efficient and effective. And that person did. And that person did a great job and used AI partially. And I think the creative part comes when people are not constrained by the limited mindset, right? And saying, oh, well, we've always done it this way, etc. So I think, again, it's being able to connect the dots or see how you can approach it or what questions to ask. I think it's curiosity, culture reinforcement for the creative thinking, maybe. Asking the good questions, right?
And not just keeping with the status quo. Doing something different and maybe get some efficiency.
Or better quality.
Okay, who's got a good one of what creativity looks like in their organization?
You're right.
Oh, the purple shirt.
Novel solutions to problems.
Sorry, say that again.
Novel solutions to problems.
Novel solutions to problems. That's a good one. What does creativity think? And what industry are you in?
We're in higher education.
Okay, novel solutions, great. Anybody else? What does creative thinking look like? Yes.
Building systems to fit a use case scenario that already exists.
Building systems to, wow, that's great. Very specific, I love that. And what industry are you in?
Food transportation.
Transportation, okay, awesome. And, oh, sure, you want to say, go ahead. Are you excited?
Providing a variety of options to things or learning and development, so
Variety of options, variety, awesome. Okay, how many of you, show of hands, have a work in an organization where creativity or creative thinking is a core value? Oh, that's a lot of you, that's wonderful, okay. So in this exercise, would you say that you knew what you were talking about because creativity is more likely talked about, it's reinforced, it's part of the culture? Yeah? Okay. So what I want to talk about next is what recognition data can tell you about your core values. So let's pretend that all of us work in an organization where creativity is a core value. And if your recognition system is centered around your core values, that means one of them is creative thinking or creativity. What I'm showing you here is 2 example messages that an employee might have written for this creativity value. Creativity message A is doing great. Priya flipped the onboarding flow, it was brilliant, nobody had done it before, there's an outcome mentioned, it's a short message, but it hits the mark. But creativity message B, I don't know what this person was thinking. Maybe he had creativity, or this person had creativity in their head, but they're not talking about creativity in this message. They're talking about whatever the team needed, couldn't have done it without you. So this sounds more like dependability. So what I love about this example is it's showing you the different facets of recognition data available to you. First of all, this is now ammunition for you to take to your culture council, to your CHRO, to your talent development, your manager trainings, to say, when we talk about creativity, these are good examples and these are not. And when you scale these examples, you can see in the organization, where is creativity being recognized? Where is creativity not being recognized? Where is creativity being understood? Where is creativity not being understood? And you can supplement creativity with any core value. The recognition data is showing you how your employees understand that value in their descriptions of everyday work. That's gold. That's such valuable information. All right. One more stat on recognition data that didn't quite make it into a report yet. It's in prep for the next Green Skills report. What I did here was I looked at organizations across a variety of industries, so manufacturing, chemicals, industries that are interested in sustainability for this upcoming green report. And I'm calling green clients organizations that have a core value around sustainability, and comparison clients are those who are in the same industry but do not have a core value for sustainability. So chances are sustainability is still important in these organizations. It's just not a core value. And what you're seeing here is when these organizations have a core value around sustainability, the mentions of green skills that are around supporting sustainability increase 42 times, which is incredible. And what this means is it's an anchor. The lesson isn't really about sustainability. This could be empathy, this could be creativity. This is about anchoring what you want your employees to recognize around the core value. Because the value is an anchor, it gives people a frame, and once you have the frame, the language follows. They describe what they're seeing and the words the organization has put in front of them. Without that anchor, the same behavior may get recognized, but it gets called something else, or maybe nothing at all. And this is true for any value. So here's what changes when skills become visible. In the WEF AI and Digital Skills Report, the second installment in the series, they profile a Fortune 50 telecom that made both their technical skills and their human skills visible across the organization. Now, what this looks like can look many different ways across many organizations. There was a lot of talk about credentialing and badges, but the key is that the skills are visible. And what happened at this particular organization is amazing. Internal mobility went up 26%. That's people moving into roles where they're a better fit. That's succession planning that doesn't require external hires. That's a workforce that grows where it stands. And it's also a cultural signal to your people that says, we see you, we know what you can do, we have somewhere for you to go. The organizations moving fastest right now are building both kinds of visibility at the same time, not picking one or both. So we talked about human-centered skills, creativity and problem solving, the most valued but the least seen. Emotional intelligence is rising fast. Collaboration is recognized the most. Learning and growth is quietly invisible. When we talk about the skills that aren't entirely replaceable about AI, this is what we need. And we need to name them and value them. Because it's not about having them, it's about seeing them. Making skills visible takes intention, and here's what that looks like. Name the skills, be specific about what you actually value, in the language people understand, not buzzwords. The actual human capabilities that make your organization work. Capture the behaviors. Build recognition practices that ask the giver to say what the person did and why it mattered, not just great job. Specifics, because specificity is what's going to give you that data. And then amplify at scale. Make recognition continuous, reaching every corner of the organization, because skills hidden in one team should be visible across all of them. And none of this is complicated, but it does require deciding on Monday morning that the skills hiding in plain sight inside your organization are worth the work of seeing. And I started by asking you to think about the best person on your team, to name what makes them great. The work in front of all of us is making sure they know it too. Every person in your organization can see their so that every person in your organization can see their own magic the way other people see it. That's how we unlock the human advantage, not by finding new humans, but by seeing the ones we already have. So I'll leave you with a question. How visible are your skills, and how intentionally are you elevating the skills for others? Thank you.